Welcome to the podcast, Orange Slice Podcast. Rich Owens, famous former owner of Tasty Freeze for almost 30 years. You owned Tasty Freeze here in Anchorage. Philanthropist. I would call you a community activist. Somebody who was always out there in the community, making things happen and being a person of positive and just doing great things for Anchorage in general. Welcome to the podcast.
Thank you. Great to be here.
Yeah. So Rich and I met probably 3 years ago, right around 2020.
That'd be about right. Yeah.
We met then. And, I don't know, Rich, maybe you can give us a little bit of, maybe an insight into, who you are and for the people listening who don't know the famous, Rich Owens, what you're about and what you've been up to.
Wow. So, I moved to Alaska in 86 from Montana. That's where I grew up in Montana and western Montana and graduated from the University of Montana. And
so you're an implant. You're not a born and raised Alaskan.
No, I wasn't born and raised here. I was born and raised in Montana, and all my family. Actually, I'm the only one that was run off. The rest of the family is all still in Montana. So
you go back often to visit, though. I know that for sure.
Say 3 or 4 times a year anyway. Go back and my brothers haven't encouraged me to move back down there because they like to come to Alaska and visit. So if I move back, it'd remove that impetus. So
for sure.
So for 9 years after college, I ran actually hardware stores. It was kind of a cross between a Costco and an AIH down in Missoula.
Okay.
And then I moved up here to open what is now the Millennium Hotel. It was originally the Clarion Hotel.
What brought you up to Alaska first? Was it that the opening of that hotel?
Right.
Well, the company you were working for was building it.
Right. Arakoa, which is a hotel management company, ownership and management company out of Denver, was building the Clarion Hotel up here, and that would have been 1986. And originally, I didn't know I was coming this way, but the manager who moved up here came up in March, and they thought they had all the positions filled up, and I got a call at 1st of June when they were getting ready to open, and they said they still want to come to Alaska. And so the next day I'm on a Northwest Airlines 747 from Seattle to Anchorage, and I took a look at the place and decided this would be a good place to come. And there's a lot of Montanans up here. It's kind of a natural progression. There's a lot of similarities and
a ton of similarities. Yeah. Totally. So you finished the work on the hotel, managed it successfully. It's still open to this day.
Oh yeah.
It's the Lakefront Hotel. I think
the Lakefront Millennium now.
Yep.
And there's people that I hired in 86 and 87, 88 that are still there. So it's kind of nice to see that I've got some long-term employees still at the hotel.
Really?
Yeah.
Wow.
Yep. The head housekeeper there is one that
40 years almost.
40 years. Yeah.
Holy shit.
So I did that. It was supposed to be 3 to 4 years. Well, in 1991, they wanted me to move to Bakersfield or Cincinnati. And I said, that from Montana boy, that's not really a promotion. So
it's a downgrade.
So I,
no offense to California
said,
people.
I'll just stay here. You don't have to pay to move me. And
then
shortly thereafter, I bought Tasty Freeze.
Yeah, how did that come about? Because
it wasn't even for sale. I wasn't looking to buy it, and the people who owned it weren't really looking to sell it. But we had common friends, and I was actually looking at a building down in Seward. It used to be called the Depot Drive-In down in Seward. When you first pull into town, it's a sailboat shop now. But I was looking at that business, and I wasn't quite sure about it. And
where before you go into this whole story, because this is, I think, why our listeners are here. Where did you get the entrepreneurial kind of spirit, or that word's new, obviously, but where did you get that sort of like, I'm going to open my own business, and the guts and the sort of the confidence to go do that?
Like my family, my dad was a pharmacist, and we owned a drugstore.
Oh, okay.
In Deer Lodge, Montana, and it was a family drugstore, small town, about that time there were about 4,500, 5,000 people in town. And we always employed high school kids. Mom and Dad were very involved with
At the drugstore.
At the drugstore, but they were involved with, Rotary and Hospital Auxiliary and Church Knights of Columbus and Hospital Guild and the library, and so I've got a younger brother and an older brother, and in our family we never really sat down and talked about what community service and philanthropy, the value of it, and why it was important and how to do it. It was just that we observed how Mom and Dad did it.
You guys were just in it. Sounds like you had great people that were showing you in the form of your parents how to do this.
My brothers and I were all the same as far as philanthropy and community service. They do what they do down in Montana, and I was run off to Alaska. But it was that orientation that I got from my parents that really directed how I was going to do my life. And from the time we were old enough to sweep sidewalks and wash windows and deliver tissues and prescriptions to little old ladies that like to bake pies and cookies, we worked at the drugstore. I mean, you got out of school and you checked in at the store, and if they needed something done, you just did it. But for all those years, all the way through grade school and high school and college, when you observe your parents just doing things for people every day,
you start to model that behavior.
That's correct. And you don't really even think about it. You just subconsciously try to do something for someone basically every day without it becomes normal. It's not where you're making an exception. It's just how you live your life. And that was so important. That's
did this come from religion, or was it just sort of your parents were just doing the right thing type of people, or was this more of a sort of like a moral religion thing?
No, it was, I'm Catholic, and our family, we were very busy with the church as well. But I would say it was just the way that their parents brought them up, because both my grandparents on my mom's side, dad's side, they didn't have a whole lot. But Mom and Dad were very good at it, and just the number of times that I remember Dad, when people needed medicine, they didn't have money. Dad was the pharmacist. He made sure they got what they needed. And,
so just to do the right thing type of attitude.
Just to do the right thing. And help where you can. And it doesn't always have to cost a lot. Sometimes it's a very simple, very small thing, but it makes such a big difference to the people that you're around. Mm-hmm. So that was where my orientation came from. And like I say, my older brother and younger brother are the same.
Do they own businesses as well?
My older brother is now retired. He was a pharmacy technician for 40 some years. And my younger brother is a general contractor. And he's helped people rebuild houses and renovations and stuff for people who couldn't do things. And so it was a special way to grow up, and it was a small town environment. And I brought that small town environment to Alaska, I guess, with me, and the way that I treat people and work with organizations and my view of philanthropy and community service came from that orientation.
Yeah, we were, I would say, on behalf of the community of Anchorage, we're lucky to have you now, hearing this story about the tight-knit family that you have and how everybody stayed in Montana. It's a miracle that we got you here, because you've done some really great things for our community. But I don't want to get too far ahead of ourselves, because we want to stay on the Tasty Free story. But I wanted to get sort of that, where that entrepreneurial spirit came from, and that makes a lot of sense that you were modeling after your dad, and it's sort of like all your brothers had it, and it kind of just seeped into the family's DNA in a lot of ways, and I think that's the case for a lot of families. My dad was an entrepreneur as well, which led me to want to be an entrepreneur and start my own business, which I did. And most people I know. So I guess, before we move on to the story of Tasty Freeze, which is going to be the main part of this podcast, what would you say to people who don't have that model, that person that's modeling for them the behavior you're talking about? How do you get that sort of in your life, and how do you sort of pick up that entrepreneurial spirit. Can you talk a little bit to that? And if you don't have any advice, that's fine. I think people listening maybe don't have that kind of person in their life and to model after. So
I think that's probably the hardest thing is they don't have that person to bounce ideas off, or they don't have the confidence to try and do it. I knew since I grew up in it that at some point, even though I had worked for 2 large corporations, that at some point I wanted to go back to that. And I especially enjoyed working with high school students and college students, because you had the ability to help kind of direct and mold and mentor.
Mold those young minds.
Yes. And so through, when I was in hardware business, I hired all the kids that were working in the yard and the stockers and stuff. And when I was at the hotel, the majority of the hotel employees fell under the department that I was, rooms division. And then when I bought Tasty Freeze, the nice thing about owning your own business is it enables you to determine where your time, talent, and treasure goes.
Time, talent, and treasure.
Time, talent, and treasure. So where you spend your time, or the special things that you have as a business person or an educator, that's your talent, and your treasure, that's what you make off the business. You can make those decisions on your own. You don't have a board of directors or someone else saying, no, this is what our budget is. And sometimes, I've had some financial people tell me, well, you got to have a budget for what you're giving away. So, no, I don't. I mean, you just...
It's nice to have a budget, but also it's the whole thing with going back to what your parents did and how they raised you. It's like, do the right thing when it feels like the right thing.
And I think that, I've had faith that if you continue to do the right thing, that
things will work out.
Things are going to work out, and they have always worked out. And so
I think that's called karma, right?
There was karma. There.
Real.
There's real karma and there's real faith. And you have to have that faith that if you're doing the right thing consistently, if you run into a problem, you have faith that, like, if the business would have, we would have had a different type of pandemic and the business would have closed and stuff like that. I believe that if you work hard and have always tried to do the best and help other people, then if you hit hard times, someone else is going to value what you have done in the past and
step up and
help you
reciprocate.
So I've been fortunate that I've never been in that position where I had to.
Well, I want to just to speak to that a little bit. I think whenever you do things for other people, you're putting deposits in this proverbial bank, right? That is a relationship.
Yep.
And so when you do something for somebody without any attachment in terms of like what you're getting back, that creates the reciprocation or reciprocal effect where it's like they automatically want to do something for you. And in your case, you have a business. And so you weren't doing the thing you were doing to get their business, but they automatically wanted to support your business. So in that way, they kind of, those people that you were giving back to probably helped drive the success of Tasty Freeze for all those years.
Absolutely.
And never allowed you to get to that point where you were like, oh shit, what am I going to do?
Absolutely. Because there were during COVID, there were so many people that would come in and say, we were fortunate because we're small, and even though we're a franchise, we're able to adjust menu, adjust
work
time.
autonomously.
Yeah, right. We could make adjustments to how we operated to serve and stay open. And as an example, we became a distribution site for vaccinations during COVID.
Yeah. I remember that.
And we took some flack for doing that because people were saying, well, we don't believe in it.
Let's be clear, Tasty Freeze itself wasn't distributing vaccinations. You were allowing one of the health providers to post up there and give people vaccinations, and everybody was doing it by choice. Whoever was doing it, nobody was being forced to do this. But you guys did. Yeah, this is a big point of contention, right? Because there's a lot of people out there who had a problem with it and had maybe some physical health problems because of the the injections and
Yes. And so what the impetus for the whole thing was, there's a lot of older people in our area, and they were coming in and they had gone to the mall or to one of the clinics, and the lines were long and there was no place to sit. And they were saying there was no place to get a vaccination in that part of town. And so I was thinking, it's slow enough in the dining room.
You
right
can
now.
sit around here with their mask on and be fine.
I talked to the city and they got it together and once a week on, it was I think Thursday evening
I remember that
from 4 to 8 for weeks where people could make reservations, and the people who wanted to get the shot were very appreciative of being able to come in, and they could sit down and wait and make an appointment. And the people who didn't want to get shot that talked to me about it, I just said, no one's forcing you to do it. It's a service available to the people who do want it.
And like you said, the main reason you were doing it sounds like, was because of that most vulnerable population of older folks that were at the high risk side.
Correct.
of having complications if they did catch COVID. So that's great. So back to the story. You're talking to the owners. How did you meet the current owners or the past owners now? But yeah, how did you meet the current owners and convince them to sell you a franchise that wasn't for sale?
Well, I was talking to him about the place, the building down in Seward that I was looking at. Mike Clough owned, and Mike and Wanda Clough owned Tasty Freeze here in town.
Oh,
and the people down in Seward did not know that I knew these people up here, and so I talked to them for a while, and it just seemed like maybe the business was doing better than on paper than it really was. And so we were talking about it, and Mike says, well, where do you want to be, Seward or Anchorage? I said, I'd prefer to be in Anchorage. And
where you were living at the time?
Where I was living, yep. And I had some other things. I was still doing some work with hotels. The Americans with Disabilities Act had just come out, and most hotels were not ADA compliant. And I had all the training for ADA signage and modifications for hotel rooms and stuff. So I actually, for 2 or 3 years in there, I did independent work with different hotels. I did a renovation on a hotel down in Petersburg on their handicap rooms and built a kitchen down there, and then like signage at the Hilton, some of the other hotels in town.
So you continued to work on hotels for this corporation.
I still actually, it was separate.
You got another.
I was just doing it on my own.
Oh, got it. Okay.
So when I was talking to Mike on a Saturday morning, this is where it kind of got funny, because I'm talking about the building in Seward, and he says, well, where do you want to be? And I said, well, Anchorage. He said, well, we really hadn't talked about selling the business, but if we were going to sell it, we'd like to sell it to somebody like you that wants to be involved with the community and the schools and stuff. Let me talk to my wife and stuff. And this is like 10 o'clock Saturday morning. Well, about 2 o'clock, he calls me and he said, let's see if we can get something worked out. So we met on Monday.
Wow, 4 hours later.
4 hours later. So I said, well, get me the taxes and stuff. Yeah. So I went over to his house and got that stuff. Monday afternoon, we agreed on a price. So this is like July 15th, roughly, that we first talked about it. And it was a done deal on August 1st. In 2 weeks, the whole thing took place. And
can you disclose how much you bought it for?
No.
Why?
But what's kind of funny is Sean Parnell was the attorney that did the paper, was my attorney.
Oh, wow. He must have been young back then.
He was, yeah.
Like back in 96. Was this 96? Yeah. When you bought it? Was
94.
94. That's right. Okay.
Yeah. So he was still doing, he had a small office here in town. And so Sean did all the paperwork for us on that. And we went to the bank and we said, well, we want to do this on August 1st. And I said, well, that's less than 2 weeks. And so not a problem for us. It's a problem for you. No, well, we can get it done. So we met between the attorney and the banks and everything. We managed to get the whole thing done.
You closed in 2 weeks?
We closed in 2 weeks on a business.
Wow.
Yes.
And it was a bank loan that you took out?
It was mostly a bank loan.
He financed some of it?
He carried part of it, and the bank carried
Wow.
part of it. Yeah. So
how do you think that would have went down well, you just did sell it like recently. How long did it take?
the best part of a year.
Best part of a year, right? 2 weeks.
So things don't happen that way anymore.
No.
And I took a look at all the paperwork for when I bought the business, and it's like 50 pages. And this time it was like 200 pages.
Yeah.
It's huge. The binder is much thicker. It was like a 1-inch binder in 94, and it's like a 3-inch binder in 2023.
That is crazy. So you get this business. You've never worked in a restaurant business, or have you?
Yeah, actually in high school and college, I had my own catering company, and that came out of necessity. Because
were you cooking the food, or were you what?
It's
tell me the story about that.
Well, since Mom and Dad, the drugstore used to be open until 9 o'clock at night.
Okay.
And so if somebody didn't throw something in the oven or reheat something before 9 o'clock, my brothers and I, we were eating late.
Yeah. So late dinners.
Late dinners. So lots of times Mom would call and say, put this in the oven, or she'd have stuff ready. So I had started cooking at an early age. And then when I was like a senior in high school, Dad was president of the Chamber of Commerce, and the guy who normally cooked the fair barbecue for 1,500 people had a heart attack. And
1,500 people?
Right.
And you stepped in.
And so they were going to cancel the barbecue, and Dad's president. I just told him at dinner one night, I says, "You're president of the Chamber of Commerce. We're not going to cancel the barbecue." And so,
as a senior in high school.
Yeah. And so Watsy Donich was the guy who had the heart attack. So he wasn't allowed to do anything, but he was out of the hospital.
Oh, he didn't die?
He didn't die.
Oh, okay.
He just wasn't allowed to do anything.
Yeah,
and
obviously.
And he had this huge barbecue pit.
So he walked you through?
And so he walked me through, and I got the cooks from the grade school to help do the potato salad, the baked beans, and bake the rolls.
My gosh.
And everything. And so we pulled this off.
1,500 people.
Because we barbecue about 1,000 pounds of top round in this big barbecue pit. It's pretty wild. It takes 24 hours.
Wow. So that's where you kind of,
So I started
learn the food business, if you will.
So I was doing that, and then all the way through college, I ran the little country club on the Elks Club kitchens in Deer Lodge.
Oh my gosh.
And
so you knew restaurants.
Right. And so then when I was in college, instead of taking underwater basket weaving and camel driving with all the out-of-state kids going to University of Montana, I took quantity food prep classes.
Wow.
So when I graduated with a degree in business communications, I was only 3 credits short of having a degree in quantity food prep.
Is that a degree?
At that,
quantity food prep.
Yeah, I was taking all the classes on quantity.
That's a handy skill to have, or knowledge to have when you start a restaurant.
Right, and the only reason I didn't get a degree in that is because I wouldn't take a 3-credit course in sewing, which now I wish I had taken.
Yeah, just to have the credential.
But because that way it would have been in the right department, and I could have gotten that as well. But,
okay, so you did have a ton of experience.
So I had a lot of experience running the Elks Club and the country club.
Okay, that makes a lot of sense why you would feel confident jumping into this restaurant situation.
And growing up in the family business, had a lot of food and beverage background. And that's actually, when I went to the hotels, I was actually hired in Missoula when they opened the Sheraton Hotel because they needed another food and beverage manager. And so that was the position that they actually hired me for as my first job with this hotel company.
Okay.
After I left the hardware business. Close connection there.
Yes.
Yeah.
Very close. So you buy Tasty Freeze. You're now, you own a restaurant. How did that feel? How did you, and how old were you when you bought it? You 40?
I would have been 30. back up here. Like 38.
Just do some quick
something
math.
like-
Yeah, you were about 38, 39.
Yeah.
Yeah, I remember you told
Yeah.
me this earlier. So you're pretty young still, relatively.
Yeah.
And you own this restaurant now, and it's obviously it's thriving, or it's actually running. How did you feel? How did it start? How did you start out with like just getting into the mode of running a restaurant?
Because we had the restaurants and the hotels and stuff, it wasn't a big transition. It went really well. And then even though the transitional, from the Clough family to me only took 2 weeks.
Yeah.
All the managers and stuff stayed. So
Yeah.
I had that. And what's interesting is Linwood, who now owns Tasty Freeze, was working for me when I bought the restaurant.
Oh, he was working there when
Linwood was one of the
when you bought it.
supervisors when I bought the restaurant.
Oh my gosh.
So he told me when he was like 16, 17, someplace in there.
Yeah.
He was there for like, 4 years, maybe a little longer. He told me then, when you retire, I want to buy the restaurant.
He said that to you then?
Yes. So,
And he got his wish.
so he had to wait for almost 40 years, but he's 46 now.
Yeah.
He was 16 or 17 when he told me, hey, when you retire, I want to buy the restaurant.
Oh my gosh.
So even though he didn't work for me most of those years, he was back and forth several times. He was determined to do it.
Yeah.
And so by the time I hit 55, something like that, he'd check in a little more often. You ready to retire? Nope. So when I hit 68, he asked the question. I said, we should start talking. If I'm out of here by the time I hit 70, then this is probably good timing.
Yeah.
And it wasn't that I was so tired of it. It was, there's a couple things entered into it. First of all, if he was going to buy it, at that time he was 45. He needs to have enough years to pay for the thing and then save for his retirement. If I would have waited longer, that would have been a good option for him. So there was that. And then I had 3 good friends who were all younger than me die in the previous year. And so I'm thinking, how long do I need to push this?
Oh my gosh. Yeah.
So I had several things in my
On your
mind there.
mind.
I mean, I didn't want to die behind the grill. Or at the fryer in the office.
Well,
there's things that I wanted to do. So it just seemed like the natural progression was to get things going.
Yeah. And now he's doing really well with the business.
Yeah.
I wanted to get to that. How do you think about death, and how do you stay so healthy? You're obviously in great shape, and you look healthy as all get out. What's your secret, and how do you think about death, being that your friends, you just said 3 of your friends passed away. I'm sorry to hear that, but what is sort of your philosophy around that? How do you deal with it?
Well, today's as good as the next to go. I mean, we don't get to pick generally. I've had a good life, and I plan on sticking around. Mom and Dad both died at 91. They both died at home, and mentally they were both with it till like the minute they died.
That's a beautiful thing.
So they just kind of wore out, and they both gave up the keys to the car on their own. My brothers and I didn't have to
force them,
ask for the keys, which is one thing that I know a lot of kids have had to.
So just had
a tough time with their getting keys from the folks.
Living in the moment, kind of being present.
Right, and try and take care of yourself. I mean, I could be 10 pounds lighter.
Yeah, all that Tasty Freeze.
Yeah, so moderation in all things.
Yep.
So I don't fear it. It's I'll be sad to leave. There's things I want to do. And everybody says, well, how long are you going to stay in Alaska? I said, well, as long as I can mow the lawn, shovel the driveway, and get the boat out of the harbor in Whittier, I'll stick around.
All right.
I creak more in the morning. You hit 70. I'll be 71 in May. And slow down, maybe don't have the same level of energy, but I spent 5 hours chipping ice and snow yesterday on the driveway when it was soft, and I'm moving today. So
that's great.
I was fearing how I was going to feel this morning, actually.
Yeah, you stay really active. I know that for sure. You're always just kind of doing stuff, especially when you're at the restaurant. It was constant Costco trips and unloading stuff and walking around talking to people and cooking and all those things. It's really important to keep busy.
It is. And there were a lot of people who were concerned because they want to know what my plan was for retirement, and I didn't really have a plan. And they say, well, so many people, they just retire and they don't have anything to do. Well, there's a group of us that formed a nonprofit and bought a kids camp here a number of years ago.
A kids camp, yeah.
A kids camp up between Palmer and Wasilla. And it's 57 acres and sleeps 100. And the church that owned it previously wasn't able to continue to maintain it and take care of it. And so a group of us put a nonprofit together, and we bought it about 11 years ago, and we paid it off a year ago in October. And if you got a kids camp, you're gonna be busy. There's
lots to do. I bet all the cabin, the maintenance, all the toys that you bring in there. Real quick plug for the kids camp. Do you want to talk a little bit about it since summer's coming up here in a few months? It's called parents probably want to get their kids involved if it's not already filled up.
Yeah, it's called St. Teresa's Camp. It's on. It's just off a Trunk Road in Bogart. It used to be called Camp Challenge, Teresa's Camp.
Okay. People will go online and Google it.
Yeah.
Or put it in the show notes.
Yeah. And so we run 8 weeks of a summer camp, but what's helped us out is we've put a lot of improvements into the camp. And so out of 52 weeks, we'll have organizations and groups that utilize it for about 42 or 43 weeks out of 52.
Okay. It's not just a summer camp for kids.
No, it's a year-round.
And different organizations, not just kids, but other
we have
organizations.
Quilters and choirs and Boy Scouts and Girl Scouts and Trail Life.
Cool. What are the qualifications to be able to use it?
It's pretty much nonprofits for the most part.
Yeah, charitable organizations.
There's a lot of different church organizations and school groups, sixth grade camps and stuff.
That's fantastic.
I've used it. And we've got 1,200 feet of lakefront. And there's 18 buildings. We have archery and boats and canoes.
Some of my best memories are from like a Bible camp that I think I went 2 summers in a row, and I just remember just being, it was the best time ever, just waking up and just having activity. I'm the type of kid too, and I think all kids, especially boys, like just want to play all day. And I think that's some of the problem with school these days is that they sit them in a classroom and it's just, here's a packet of work to do. And it's like, holy cows, for a kid with that much energy, like to set them down and expect them to do these packets of work. These kids need to be out playing for 3 or 4 hours and maybe do 45 minutes to 2 hours of work at the most. But I think, kids aren't playing enough. And I think it's a really important thing for parents to realize.
I grew up with camp down in Montana. And so when I found out this camp was probably going to go out of business, the Church of God didn't want to have it subdivided and made into houses because they had spent 50 years putting this thing together.
It was close to their heart.
Yes. And so we worked out an arrangement with them, and they've been very good to work with, and they carried the paper on it for 9 years for us, and with no interest. And you just don't get people to carry $1 million note with no interest.
Yeah, 0 interest, and the land's probably worth way more than that, I would guess. And
now it is.
Yeah, it's, for sure.
It's built up. The backside of our property is Wolf Lake subdivision.
Okay, and so somebody would love to subdivide it and make it another neighborhood, I'm sure.
Yes.
Yeah.
And so we've been very happy with the results on that, but it's a lot of work.
Yeah,
I bet. Volunteer board.
And you keep busy doing that. So your health, I wanted to bring up your hair because you have one of the best hairlines and best the best hairs I've ever seen. It just stays in place no matter what. You were worried about it when you came in. You said it was windy because you knew we would probably be on camera here. But yeah, where do you credit who gave you that hair, and who do you credit with it?
My dad.
Your dad.
Dad's side of the family.
It's almost cartoon character perfect.
Dad's hair turned white, but he had mostly a full head of hair.
Give a look at the camera so the people.
And everybody, my barber is a little Korean lady, and so one day I'm getting a haircut, and she says, "You no lie." I said, "What?" She said, "You no lie." I don't understand what you're saying, Lucy. She says, "You no lie. I would know." And I said, "About what?" She said, "You don't color your hair." I said, "Oh, you don't lie." I said, "No, I don't lie."
You're not lying. No, you don't need that.
I've been fortunate.
Yeah.
I've got a lot of friends who give me a hard time because they're bald and all white hair.
I have
65.
friends. Yeah, I have friends at 40. Lots of friends who are bald and fat. So, yeah, you're doing great at 70. To have a full head of hair and in pretty damn good shape, I should say so myself. But yeah, you brought up shrimping too. I think your boat is a big part of your life, especially obviously being in Alaska in the summer. Talk a little bit about what the shrimping life and how where you do it out of and how that works.
Well, that was part of the reason that I wanted to stay. Ever since I got up here, my first boat was a little 14-foot inflatable with a 20-horse Johnson on the back.
Where were you running that out of?
Homer, Seward, and Whittier.
Okay.
And when I first started going to Whittier,
the Zodiac.
Yeah,
that's
like
scary.
Zodiac.
Yeah.
It was when you had to drive on the train with the trailer and the truck.
Oh my gosh.
And go through the tunnel because you couldn't drive through the tunnel at that point. Everything was on the train
only.
And so you'd drive the truck and the trailer on to the rail car and you'd go through the tunnel. And that was always a kick. And then that boat was small enough and light enough. It was not a problem to haul it to Seward or Homer. And then about the time I turned 50, I was going across Resurrection Bay, and when Carrie Kerrigan and I had gone out for the weekend. We left on Friday.
Carrie Kerrigan. Haven't heard that name in a while.
Yeah,
Is that from Channel 2 News?
Yeah.
Carrie Kerrigan. Yeah.
So we went out Friday afternoon, and it was beautiful. The water was like glass, and we camped on Friday night and Saturday night. And Sunday we were headed back in, and Resurrection Bay can get pretty crappy, and it got real crappy, and it was pouring rain, and we're in this open boat, and it's really safe. The waves were getting pretty big.
You can't sink those things. They're going to float no matter what, even if it's full of water.
Even if there's no bodies in them.
Exactly.
The boat's going to float.
The boat's going to float.
So I just got in behind one of the fishing boats that was going back in, and he knew what I was doing, so I kept up with him without any trouble. But we were getting real wet and really pounded, and I decided that, okay, I'm 50. I want something with a windshield and a heater. And so
I want to be comfortable.
I want to be a little more comfortable than this. So I ended up finding a little 22-foot Sea Sport, and I had that for 8 or 9 years. And then when I had ladies on the boat, they wanted to have an inside potty.
Of course.
And so I decided that, okay, I'll find a 24-foot that has a regular head on it, and couldn't find one. But a boat broker down in Juneau came up with a 27-foot pilot house, which is like a lot bigger than what I had anticipated. But there was a fellow who wanted to be a partner with me on a boat, and so I called him, and he said, "Yeah, let's go ahead and do it." So I ended up with 27 Seasport pilot house, but it took a long time to get a slip in Whittier.
I bet, because it's so limited.
But about 5 years ago, I got a slip for the boat, so that makes it a lot easier. But I love shrimping and just sightseeing out of Whittier. The nice thing about, first of all, it was close, and with the restaurant, I just couldn't be gone for 2 or 3 days at a shot. So Whittier, I can run down there in the morning and come back in the evening.
Hour-ish drive, hour 15 if you miss the train or miss the tunnel.
Miss the tunnel.
Yeah.
I got real good at
timing.
My timing on the tunnel. So it made more sense to be in Whittier. And so I finally got the slip, and that's kind of my happy place. You can go down there, and it's just kind of nice.
Get away from everything.
If the weather gets lousy, there's always some place to hide, which out of Homer and out of Seward, that can be difficult at times.
Yep.
But you can always find the lee side of an island or a cove or a bay.
You got any crazy stories of being out there and getting anything happen while you're out there?
Oh,
there's always inclement weather, right?
Sometimes, I mean, some of the strangest times have been in fog, because I've got really good instruments. So I've got radar and sonar and GPS mapping. So I've got really nice instruments, and you can usually find the people who don't have good instruments when there's fog. And you kind of hope that they're not going very fast. And so numerous times,
oh, that's scary.
I've noticed that there's a boat kind of either going in a circle or going really slow. And so I'll approach them and ask them, you having a problem in the fog here? And so quite a few times I've actually led somebody back in that doesn't have really good instruments. Or if they're going really slow, it's probably because they don't have radar. They might have a GPS map, but that doesn't tell you if there's a boat or a kayak or something else in front of you.
Yeah, it's a little scary. When the fog rolls in, it can be super dense and you can't see anything. And if the boat doesn't have instruments,
if there's zero visibility,
you're flying blind.
So it's always been kind of nice to lead people in. They're very appreciative.
Yeah, on that bad weather.
Yeah, but there's some of the things you pull up from the bottom once in a while. I lost a set of shrimp pots a couple years ago, and so the next time I went over, I brought a second set, and I put those shrimp pots down about the same area that I had the other set of shrimp pots down in. And when I pulled them the next day, I managed to snag my other shrimp pots, and this is 600 feet down. And
what was in them? How long was it since you lost them?
Well, it had only been a couple days.
Oh, only a couple days. So were you trying to do this?
No, it was just
you were like, this is my area. That's where you usually shrimp. So you're like going to put them down in that same area. I put them
back down, but to manage to hit them and then snag the rope.
Wow!
And somebody had cut the buoy off, and so the lead.
Oh, that's why you lost them.
Yeah, they weren't really lost. It was the buoy. You could tell the rope had been
do
cut.
People do that often? They cut it? And why would they do it?
Some in spite, and other people run over them.
Oh, it could have been a run over situation.
Props can cut them as well.
That makes sense. Okay.
But this
that's amazing. And what was in it?
There was some shrimp in it as well, but they had been in there for 4 or 5, 6 days.
It was too long.
But it was just the odds of having that happen are pretty minuscule when you're that far down. You've got that much of a tide running back and forth. To manage to put your pots down
in the same spot.
In the same spot, enough to catch that line.
And the gear's not cheap.
No.
I mean, how much does a setup cost like that?
Well, each pot's about $110, $120
You got
right
6
now.
of them?
Well, that year there was only 3. You're only allowed 3, but there were 2 pots on that line. So I went out. I left with 2 pots, and I came back basically I pulled 4 pots because the line was tangled.
Wow!
I could tell when it started coming up, it was pulling real heavy.
Yeah.
So that usually means you're snagged on something. Lots of times there'll be other line or rope or things that come up because there's a lot of pots sitting on the bottom of the ocean.
Yeah, right. I imagine.
Over all the years.
I heard they're going to delay the season this year. Is that correct? Have they made a decision on that yet?
I haven't seen anything in writing.
Okay, I've talked to a couple of shrimpers. The Wilbanks is one, and then I talked to the guy at LFS, and he was like, "We don't know yet. We're trying to figure out what they're going to do." So they're kind of hesitant. Has there been a sort of shortage of shrimp, or has it been going down, or people are just overfishing?
I haven't seen the reports from last year on what the counts were on catch.
We'll wait till that comes out. But.
So we'll find out. There's more people doing it now than there have ever been.
Yeah. I mean, people are. I mean, I see a lot of my friends going out there and they're getting trash can fulls, 50-gallon trash can fulls. There's no real limit, is there?
There's no limit. It has started traditionally April 15th and gets done September 15th.
But as far as like how much you can get, right? You just have to report it, right?
You just have to report it. You're only allowed 2 pots in the regular area. If you go far enough out, you can do 3 pots. That was last year. I don't know if they modified that for this year, but.
And these are Alaska spot shrimp, right?
Most of them are spot shrimp.
Yeah,
they're size.
Big.
They're big.
They're huge.
Yep.
They're so good. Do you ever eat them right off of like raw, like sushi?
I'm not I like my sushi
cooked or fried.
Yeah, I like cooked sushi.
I did want to talk about the Coulis Air Force Base and the connection between you and how Tasty Freeze and you and Coulis, sort of the backstory there, because the base actually closed, which is kind of
about 12 years ago.
Yeah, hard thing for a community, and just kind of talk about how you got involved with those guys. Obviously, they were really close to the restaurant, so they were patrons for a long time. But
yes.
you had a way deeper relationship with that, and there's a flag out front, and there's a bunch of things that you guys connected on.
With when Coulis, the Air National Guard base, was about 5 blocks down the street, and I bought Tasty Freeze on August 1st of '94, and then 2 weeks later, on August 14th, I think it is, I had some friends that were in a plane crash over by Alexander Lake, and the pilot and one of the other folks that was on the plane died, and one was saved. But what the Air Guard at that point, they were doing a practice that afternoon, and so there was a C-130 with 2 pararescue men on board, and they were about 5 minutes away from where the plane went in, and the pilot on the plane had radioed the tower and said that he got in clouds and he was about out of fuel. And then he ran out of fuel, and they crashed near the end of the runway over at Alexander Lake. And so I got to know the air rescue side right away. And then I'd recognize people from the guard base coming into the restaurant. I mean, obviously, there were a lot of uniforms. There wasn't a day that'd go by where you didn't have a lot of uniforms in there at lunchtime. And kind of the nice thing about Coulis is it operated 24/7. So when you open at 10 o'clock, you'd have the guys who came in, the maintainers who went in at 6 o'clock in the morning were ready for lunch. So it was consistent. And so they were a big part of the business at Tasty Freeze, and we became friends with a lot of them. And then it would have been probably about in 1997 or 98, there's an organization called Employer Support of the Guard and Reserve, ESGR. And ESGR it's a volunteer organization that the appointments come from the Secretary of Defense, and it's the go-between organization between traditional Guard and Reserve members and their employers. And so the main purpose is to like if there is deployments going out, we would do pre and post deployment briefings with the military members, and we would also work with their employers and remind them of, okay, here are your responsibilities to your employees. There's federal regulations that dictate that when they come back, they need to have their job back, and if they were eligible for promotion during the time that they're serving, that doesn't go away. And then if there's an issue between an employer and a Guard and Reserve member, we provide ombudsman services to try and resolve the issues. And most of them are just issues where an employer might not know what those regulations are. So we do a lot of training that way. And then we also recognize employers that go above and beyond for their citizen soldiers, basically. And so ESGR covers Army Guard, Air Guard, and then also any of the Reserve, Navy Reserve, Army Reserve, any reserve components. So if it's if anybody falls in that category, that's who we're there to assist. And so I became involved with them, and I'm still involved with the USGR. I was the region chair for 8 or 9 years, and I state chair for 4 years. And now I'm a has-been. I'm a state chair emeriti.
Yeah, you've been there the longest.
There's some others that have been there actually a couple years longer
really?
than I have been. Yeah. So, but it's that was my affiliation with the military. And
Interesting.
Then
Okay, I didn't know that.
When Coolest closed.
Yep. What year was that? Was that like 2012? You said it was like 12 years ago.
Yeah, 11, 12. We put one of the first things I did when I bought Tasty Freeze is that corner where the big garden is out there. That was actually a mud hole. The city and the state had just redone the intersection at Raspberry and Jewel Lake. And
they didn't do any
at that point
landscaping at all.
Right. That contract was led about a year before the federal, if you're going to use federal funds, they need to include landscaping, need to be included in it. So there was no landscaping that was involved with that. It was just a big mud hole out front. And we had abandoned cars and garbage and everything out there. And I think this is the front of my business. And even though I didn't own them all, it perturbed me that businesses had to put up with that because the state and the city were not willing to step up and make it look decent. So we put this garden in. The city did give us a landscape architect, Jonathan Schulk was his name, and so we did the design, and then we did about $60,000 worth of landscaping and raising it, and the concrete block. The guard put the concrete block in for us, and it we did it for $4,200 in donations.
That's unbelievable because it looks beautiful. It's like, and it's something you guys upkeep to this day with new flowers every season, and the garden makes that corner look beautiful, and it's really a community thing.
Right,
the community
it's
volunteer.
It's an adopt-a-park,
mm-hmm.
And incidentally, we're looking for. I told the city, I said, I can't keep doing this, and so after what, 25 years, they need to find somebody else to kind of head that up.
It over.
So if there is a gardener out there, somebody who's really interested in nice flower beds and stuff,
come take it over.
Please talk to me.
Why not like Alaska Mill and Feed or Bell's Nursery or some?
Well, the flowers come from. We still get the flowers from the municipal greenhouse.
They donate them.
So, right, that comes from municipal greenhouse.
That's nice.
But to get the flower beds ready, to get the flowers put in and maintain them throughout the summer, it's a lot of work.
Yeah.
And so if it can be divided up between a couple different scout groups or organizations, that would be great.
Yeah.
Now, the other thing that we had always wanted to have a flagpole out there, but flagpoles are really, really expensive.
It's a huge flagpole that's out there too.
Correct. So when they announced that they were going to close the guard base, I went to the general and I said, can I have the flagpole? And so we worked on this for a while, but J-Bear, any of the people who had first right to the flagpole was basically any group on J-Bear. And he said, just wait until we hand it over to the airport. And he says, you know John Parrott? And I said, yeah, I know John. He says, well, go talk to John. And so I stopped by to see John and said, hey, when you guys take over the guard base, we want to move the flagpole to the garden, and we want to dedicate it to Coulis, because that was the headquarters flagpole, and it's a big flagpole.
I mean, it's got to be, I don't know, 50? I was going to say 60, and I would overshoot it, but 50, yeah.
Well, if we count what we put in the ground.
And then it's like, it's elevated from where you put it in the ground, too, so it looks huge.
So the day that I was there for the ceremony, that when the guard signed it over to the airport, and at the end of the reception that day, John asked me, he says, well, when do you want the flagpole? And I says, I'll let you know. So I went down to see Bill Watterson from Watterson Construction. Yep. And he assigned one of his best people to help me get this thing done. And we moved it and got between concrete and culvert.
I was going to say,
everything.
it must have been such a hard work to get that thing out of the ground.
All the trucking and stuff, all the equipment to break
donated
the
by
concrete
Watterson.
came from Watterson and a few other groups. I paid $37 to get that done, and that was because the guy I needed some plastic wedges to square it up the night before we poured the concrete. And I had a friend that worked at AIH who could have gotten them for me, but he was on vacation. And so I had to pay, I had to pay $37 for the wedges to straighten the flagpole out.
Oh my gosh. So forever, yeah.
So, and there's a nice plaque that...
the plaque's there. What does the plaque say?
The plaque talks about the dedication for the 55 years that Coulis
Yeah,
was in the neighborhood, and it's dedicated to all those who served. And so it's there, and the parents' family got that plaque put together for us. And
yeah, it's a great story of how the community came together, and like from the flowers and the flower beds and the landscaping to the flagpole and the plaque and all that came together as a part of your contribution. I think that's fantastic.
Well, it was a fun project.
Sounds like it almost broke your heart.
It's just
it's a lot of work.
It's still a lot of work, and so I'm begging you, if somebody's out there that would help with the flower beds,
anybody,
come talk to me.
Yeah, I don't want to. We're getting ready to wrap up here, but I wanted to end with I don't want to break your heart on this one too, because I don't think anybody. I just heard this the other day. Okay, and you know that song, the Jack and Diane song.
Right.
How does it go? Sitting out in front of the Tasty Freeze,
yeah.
sucking on a chili dog.
Yeah.
Do you know what he's talking about when he says sucking on a chili dog? Do you know what he's referring to? I
just hear I don't pay attention to most words on that. I catch Tasty Freeze every time it comes on.
Sitting out front of Tasty Freeze, sucking on a chili dog, something like that. Outside of Tasty Freeze, sucking on a chili dog. So it's come to light recently. This is on social media. I think I saw it on a reel, that Chili Dog was a brand of Slurpee back in the day that Tasty Freeze used to sell. You remember, is the dog with the floppy ears?
Yeah.
Chili Dog was the brand of Slurpee. So he wasn't sucking on a hot dog with chili on it. He was sucking on a Chili Dog Slurpee.
Okay, well, we haven't done Slurpees for a long time.
Yeah, but I just found this out. I was always thought it was a weird way to describe eating a chili dog, was sucking on a chili dog. But now it makes so much more sense.
Now I'll have to pay attention to the rest.
I can't even believe you didn't know the whole song.
No.
You only heard Tasty Freeze.
And Chili Dog, yeah. But like Chili Dog is our number 3 item, I think, still. So.
Shout out to what is it? John Mellencamp. John Mellencamp, Jack and Diane, sucking on a chili dog. That is a actual slushy brand, and he was not sucking on a chili dog.
Wow.
Yeah.
Oh well.
Rich, it's been absolute pleasure. The time flew by. We're trying to keep it under an hour. And I think we're going to have you on for episode 2. We talked about having you and Carol Makar on, who is the owner of the Girdwood Ice Cream Shop. Yep. And you guys are good friends. We call you the king and queen of ice cream in Alaska. So
that would be a different type of a podcast.
It would be fun. I think it's been fun. Carol is a character as well. So we'll be sure to get her on this next time. But honestly, it's been a huge pleasure, and I really appreciate you coming on. Thanks for coming on the podcast.
All right. Well, thank you very much. It's been fun.